Did you know that a small and ordinary-looking coin from 1951, the United States wheat penny, once minted in the millions and carried in the pockets of everyday Americans, is now connected to a staggering rumored face value of $27 million and has become one of the most fascinating stories in numismatic history? A tale that bridges the gap between the humble beginnings of post-war America and the extraordinary collector's market of today, and while most people dismiss a penny as almost worthless, this particular year and type of coin has risen to legendary status because of its rarity and condition, its historical context, its role in American monetary history, and the growing fascination with coin errors, varieties, and pristine mint states that can transform an object worth 1 cent into a financial miracle. So let's dive into this captivating journey where we unravel why a 1951 wheat penny, something millions of Americans once overlooked, could today be tied to an incredible value of $27 million, a number so shocking it forces even the most casual observer to ask how and why such a small copper coin could reach such astronomical worth. And the answer lies not only in the physical coin itself but also in the story of its production, its cultural significance, and the unique circumstances that shaped rarity and demand in the coin collecting world. Because in 1951 the United States was only 6 years past the end of World War II, the nation was booming, the economy was expanding. The Cold War tensions were simmering, and everyday items like pennies, nickels, and dimes reflected not just commerce but national identity, and the wheat penny designed by Victor David Brenner, with Abraham Lincoln on the obverse and the 2 symbolic wheat stalks on the reverse, had already been circulating since 1909. Meaning that by 1951 it carried more than 4 decades of heritage and familiarity, making it a sentimental and historic piece of currency in addition to its economic use. And when you consider that millions were struck in Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, one might wonder how rarity comes into play, but it's the survival of coins in uncirculated, high-grade condition, and in certain error or variety forms, that creates the possibility of immense worth. Because coins that were once used in lunch counters, pay phones, and soda machines are rarely preserved in pristine form. And those that somehow escape circulation become treasures, commanding extraordinary prices at auctions. And in the case of the 1951 wheat penny, what collectors look for are errors like doubled dies, off-center strikes, repunched mint marks, and unusual planchet flaws, all of which can turn a penny into a once-in-a-lifetime discovery, with some documented sales showing that wheat pennies in top conditions, especially with errors, can sell for tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. And when rumors of coins connected to multi-million-dollar values circulate, they often involve unique circumstances like a one-of-a-kind error or a historically significant example that captures the imagination of collectors and investors alike. And that is why the 1951 wheat penny's association with $27 million continues to intrigue so many. Because even though its typical value is much lower, the mystique of a rare coin carrying such staggering potential drives both curiosity and the market. And if we reflect on why people value these coins so highly, it comes down to scarcity, beauty, history, and the thrill of owning a tangible piece of America's past. Something that connects everyday life of the 1950s to the present day, something that ordinary families once spent without a second thought but now might be locked away in a protective case, guarded as a fortune. And when you look closely at a 1951 wheat penny, the simple artistry of Lincoln's profile and the wheat stalks represent resilience, growth, and the enduring power of the American story, which adds layers of meaning for collectors beyond just monetary value. And this is exactly why stories of life-changing penny finds keep surfacing, because people dig into jars, drawers, and old boxes and sometimes uncover coins they never knew could be valuable, sparking viral news stories, collector excitement, and a renewed interest in numismatics. And so the tale of the 1951 wheat penny valued at $27 million is not just about copper, strikes, and mint marks, but about human fascination with rarity, the chance of discovery, and the dream of turning something so small into something unimaginably huge. And whether or not every collector finds a multi-million-dollar treasure, the search itself has value because it connects generations, inspires curiosity, and teaches history in a way textbooks cannot. and that's why this coin has become such a symbol of big money in history. One that captures imagination far beyond the walls of coin shows or auction houses. And before we wrap up this incredible journey through time, rarity, and value, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more amazing stories about coins and treasures that could be sitting right in your pocket change. Next, 1946 wheat penny. Imagine holding a simple copper coin in your hand, one that most people would pass by without giving a second thought, yet that very coin could secretly hold the key to life-changing wealth. And today we are diving into one of the most fascinating stories in American numismatic history, the 1946 wheat penny from the USA. A coin that has sparked collectors' imaginations for decades and has been rumored to carry a face value reaching an astonishing $12 million, a sum that instantly transforms what looks like an ordinary penny into a legendary piece of treasure. And the story of this coin is not just about money but about history, craftsmanship, rarity, human curiosity, and the unpredictable twists of fate that turn certain coins into artifacts of immense value. Because when you think about the wheat penny, especially from the mid-1940s, you are thinking about a time in America that had just emerged from the throes of World War II, a country on the rise, soldiers returning home, industries booming, and small everyday objects like pennies circulating in millions. Yet some of those coins, through tiny errors in minting, unusual preservation, or sheer historical relevance, became far more than change for a piece of candy. They became prized possessions, and the 1946 wheat penny is one such piece. Struck in the years following wartime metal shortages when the composition of coins had shifted from steel in 1943 back to copper and zinc in later years, collectors prize these 1946 pennies not just for their abundance but for the rare variations and errors that occurred, some being double-die strikes, off-center mintings, clipped planchets, or transitional errors where remnants of wartime experimentation with metals crept into production, and the mystique around such coins often builds legends of value. Such as the claim that one particular 1946 wheat penny reached a face value of $12 million because of its unique combination of rarity, historical context, and desirability among collectors. And when we trace the journey of this coin, it is important to recognize how wheat pennies in general became iconic. First minted in 1909 to commemorate Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday, designed by Victor David Brenner with the famous Lincoln portrait on the obverse and 2 wheat stalks on the reverse. These coins circulated widely until 1958, when the reverse design changed, yet the wheat penny remained embedded in American culture as a symbol of history and nostalgia. And as we move back to 1946, we see that tens of millions were minted across Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. But within such massive production runs, even the tiniest minting anomaly could transform one coin into a rarity worth millions. Stories circulate of a 1946 penny that was struck with leftover wartime planchets, giving it a distinct metal composition not found in regular coins of that year, and if authenticated, such a coin could command astronomical sums at auctions. The $12 million figure, while sensational, represents the incredible speculative nature of rare coin collecting where passionate buyers bid fiercely for one-of-a-kind specimens, and beyond its rarity, the 1946 wheat penny symbolizes resilience and transition, a coin minted in a time when America was reshaping itself after the war, when every cent carried the labor of millions of workers, soldiers, and citizens rebuilding their lives. And in that context, a coin becomes more than copper. It becomes a story frozen in metal, with collectors today hunting through old jars, dusty drawers, and inherited collections hoping to stumble upon a wheat penny that could be their golden ticket. And while most 1946 wheat pennies are common and worth only a few cents in circulated condition, the key lies in condition, rarity, and unique characteristics. Uncirculated or proof-like versions with pristine luster can fetch thousands, and when paired with unique minting mistakes, they ascend into the realm of millions. That is why the rumor of a $12 million face value coin captivates so strongly, because it plays on the dream of the everyday person discovering fortune in the simplest of places, the kind of dream that keeps coin hunting alive, fueling YouTube channels, auctions, and forums dedicated to uncovering the next big find. So when we think of the 1946 wheat penny, we are not just thinking of copper but of legacy, hidden wealth, and a slice of history that continues to surprise us, making it a treasure worth discussing. And as we close this incredible story, remember that the world of coin collecting is filled with mysteries waiting to be uncovered. And who knows, maybe the next multimillion-dollar penny is sitting right in your pocket change. So if you enjoyed this journey into one of history's most fascinating coins and want to keep exploring the hidden treasures of the past with us, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and stay tuned for more amazing discoveries that could change the way you see the simplest objects forever. Next, 1958 wheat penny today as we dive deep into one of the most fascinating, mysterious, and highly valuable treasures in American coin history, the 1958 wheat penny, a small copper coin that on the surface looks like any other cent from the late 1950s but in truth hides a story of rarity, error, mistakes, and historic significance that have made certain examples of this penny worth as much as $9 million, a staggering number that has captured the imagination of collectors, historians, and everyday people who wonder how a 1-cent coin could possibly be worth more than a mansion, a fleet of luxury cars, or even a small fortune in gold. And to understand why this coin is so valuable, we have to begin by looking at the history of the wheat penny itself. Minted from 1909 until 1958 as a tribute to President Abraham Lincoln with the familiar bust on the obverse and the 2 wheat stalks on the reverse, the coin became an iconic piece of American change, carried through the pockets of soldiers, workers, families, and children for generations, and by the time 1958 rolled around it marked the final year of the wheat penny before the reverse design would change to the Lincoln Memorial in 1959. Meaning that every 1958 penny already holds a special place as the last issue of a beloved design. But when we look specifically at the 1958 penny minted in Denver, we find a series of unusual stories, minting mistakes, and rare errors that elevate this ordinary 1-cent piece into the realm of extreme value, because while millions were minted, a handful left the presses with unique characteristics that collectors today fight to own. And this is where the $9 million figure comes into play, not because every 1958 penny is worth that much, but because the rarest and most exceptional error examples have reached values that most people would never expect for a coin so common at face value. And to understand this properly, we must explore the kinds of errors and mistakes that give the 1958 wheat penny its extraordinary reputation, starting with the concept of double dies, one of the most famous and sought-after mint errors in American numismatics, occurring when the die that strikes the coin shifts slightly during production, creating doubled images on the letters or numbers. And in the case of the 1958 penny, the Philadelphia version is already famous for an extremely rare double die obverse where the inscriptions, Liberty, and In God We Trust, appear doubled. But in Denver, though fewer double dies are officially confirmed, the possibility of misaligned dies, doubled numbers in the date, or even subtle shifts in lettering make certain coins from that year stand out dramatically, and when experts authenticate such a coin it can skyrocket in value, sometimes into the millions, as collectors know they are holding something that is essentially one of a kind. And beyond doubled dies there are also repunched mint marks, a common error in mid-20th century. Coins where the D mint mark was punched into the die more than once, resulting in overlapping impressions that can be seen under magnification, and depending on how dramatic the repunching appears, these varieties can command incredible premiums, with some collectors willing to pay 6 or 7 figures for the cleanest examples, because they represent a tangible mistake in the minting process that was never supposed to reach circulation, and that mistake makes the coin rare, desirable, and valuable. And then we consider other possibilities like off-center strikes, where the coin design is struck off balance leaving part of the planchet blank and part of the design missing, or broad strikes that extend the metal beyond its normal rim, or die cracks that leave raised lines across Lincoln's portrait or the reverse wheat stalks. Each of these small anomalies adds character, rarity, and collector appeal. And when combined with the fact that 1958 was the final wheat penny year, the demand increases exponentially, creating bidding wars that can send the price of a single penny into astronomical heights. and in the world of high-end numismatics it only takes two determined collectors with deep pockets to push the value of a coin far beyond what anyone might expect. Which is why a 1958 Dewey penny with dramatic errors and near-perfect preservation could realistically fetch millions at auction, and when one such coin was rumored to have sold privately for around $9 million. It sent shockwaves through the hobby, inspiring everyday people to search their change jars, basements, and inherited collections for 1958 D pennies that might hold hidden errors. And this is what makes the story so compelling, because for many people coins like these represent the dream of turning something ordinary into extraordinary wealth, of finding a hidden treasure in the most unlikely place. And the 1958 Dewey penny embodies that dream perfectly, because while most of them remain only worth a cent or perhaps a few dollars in collectible grade, the rarest examples prove that mistakes at the Denver Mint in that final year of wheat cent production created coins that are virtually priceless, a blend of history, chance, rarity, and collector obsession. And this is why it is so important for collectors to carefully examine their coins, using magnification to check for doubled dies in the lettering, looking closely at the D mint mark for signs of repunching, inspecting the edges for off-center strikes or broad strikes, and studying the fields for cracks, die chips, or anomalies, because each of these factors can transform a simple copper penny into a multi-million-dollar treasure. And in the case of the 1958 D penny, the stakes are higher because of the transition between the wheat reverse and the memorial design, making 1958 the end of an era and adding historical weight to the coin's value. And when you add historical weight to rarity, and rarity to error, and error to collector demand, you end up with the perfect storm for a coin that can command extreme value. And it's worth noting that condition plays a massive role too, because even an error coin loses some of its premium if it is heavily circulated, scratched, or worn. But when you find one in mint state condition, bright red copper luster, sharp details, and certified by a grading service like PCGS or NGC, you are looking at a once-in-a-lifetime find that can compete with the most expensive coins in American history. And this is exactly why the 1958 Dewey penny is celebrated, because it shows us how a coin's story is not just about face value, it is about mistakes, history, rarity, and the human desire to own something truly unique. And so the 1958 D penny costing $9 million is not just about the copper and design, it is about what it represents. The final chapter of the Wheat Penny series, the errors that slipped through quality control, the tiny imperfections that became treasures, the collectors who chased them, and the fascination we all feel when something so small and humble carries such monumental value. And so when you hold a 1958 Dewey penny in your hand, whether it's worth a cent or millions, you are holding a piece of American history, a coin that traveled through time, and a reminder that sometimes the smallest objects can hold the greatest stories. And if you enjoyed learning about this rare and valuable coin, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and join us for more incredible stories about coins worth big money that might just be hiding in your pocket change. Next, 1946's Wheat Penny, today's fascinating deep dive into one of the most intriguing treasures of American numismatic history, a story that blends mystery, error, rarity, and staggering value, as we uncover the remarkable journey of the 1946's Wheat Penny. A coin that under ordinary circumstances would seem to be nothing more than a modest piece of copper produced in the aftermath of World War II, but in this rare and legendary case has been tied to a jaw-dropping valuation of $17 million because of the astonishing combination of errors, mistakes, and unique minting circumstances that have transformed it from a simple cent into a fortune. And as we explore this extraordinary story, we will look at how coins like this can go from pocket change to historical icons, capturing the imagination of collectors worldwide. And why a small slip at the San Francisco Mint in 1946 could end up rewriting the way we see the value of what many once dismissed as a mere penny. Because this is not just about copper and cents, this is about human error, historical context, scarcity, and the thrill of discovery that drives collectors to pay millions for something the rest of us might casually overlook in the bottom of a drawer or a jar of coins. And when we talk about the 1946's Wheat Penny, we must remember that the S mint mark indicates its origin in San Francisco. A mint that has produced some of the most collectible and historically significant coins in United States history, especially in the 1940s when the nation was shifting from wartime production back into civilian minting, and in 1946, just 1 year after the end of World War II, there were still remnants of the wartime minting practices, especially concerning the materials used, as the mint had experimented with steel cents in 1943, shellcase cents in 1944 and 1945, and then returned to primarily copper-based cents in 1946. But within this shift and experimentation arose a window of opportunity for minting errors, which is exactly where the legend of the 1946 penny comes to life, because collectors have identified several critical mistakes and anomalies that make this coin astonishingly rare, including doubled die obverse where Lincoln's profile or the date appears doubled due to a die misalignment, repunched mint marks where the S appears stamped multiple times slightly off-center, off-center strikes where the design is noticeably shifted leaving blank planchet exposed, clipped planchets where the coin itself appears to have a missing curved portion due to a blanking punch overlap, and transitional errors where leftover metals from wartime could have been mistakenly used, leading to a coin struck on a planchet not intended for 1946 at all, such as bronze, steel, or shellcase stock, and each of these types of errors has been confirmed in some instances, making certain examples of the 1946 wheat penny some of the rarest and most valuable in existence, because collectors prize not only the base rarity but also the uniqueness of individual mistakes, and when you combine multiple errors on a single coin you get a once-in-a-lifetime collectible that becomes priceless in the eyes of high-end numismatists, and in the case of the 1946 wheat penny that is said to have reached an extraordinary valuation of $17 million. The story suggests that this particular coin combined a double die obverse with a repunched mint mark and possibly even a wrong planchet error, creating a trifecta of mistakes that virtually guarantees no other coin like it exists, and rarity of this magnitude always multiplies the value exponentially, because when there is one known example of a coin, collectors with vast resources will stop at nothing to secure it, and that bidding war drives up the price into the millions. But what also adds to the allure of the 1946 wheat penny is the timing. Because 1946 was a year of transition for the United States Mint, where mints were still recovering from wartime production, employees were under pressure, dies were reused and often overpolished, and quality control sometimes slipped in ways that would never be allowed today, which meant that a coin like this could slip through unnoticed, circulate briefly, and then be discovered decades later in a collector's hoard or even in a roll of pennies sitting untouched in someone's attic. And this possibility of hidden treasure excites people because it means even now there may be undiscovered 1946 wheat pennies out there with dramatic errors, waiting to be found, and when you think about how such a small copper coin can command millions you start to understand the power of numismatics, because it's not just about money, it's about owning a piece of history, about holding in your hand the evidence of a mistake that tells a story of its time, and when that mistake is one of a kind its value becomes immeasurable. And that's exactly why the 1946 wheat penny is considered such a marvel. But let's break down some of the most notable errors in more detail because these are what truly make the coin worth big money. First, the double die obverse, which is one of the most popular errors in numismatics, because it is instantly recognizable even to the untrained eye. And in the case of 1946 pennies, there are reports of strong doubling in the date, especially the digits 1946, and in Lincoln's eye and lips, creating an almost ghost-like effect of two overlapping faces, and this type of error is caused when the die used to strike the coin was impressed incorrectly multiple times, misaligned slightly each time, and since dies are used to strike thousands of coins, if a doubled die gets into circulation it produces a small but distinct run of error coins, but with the 1946 the doubled die coins are incredibly scarce, and when you add in the repunched mint mark error, where the S was hand-punched into the die and sometimes required multiple strikes to align correctly, creating overlapping or shadowed S marks, you get a coin that has not one but two visible minting errors, doubling its desirability. And then consider the possibility that some 1946 pennies were struck on leftover wartime planchets, like the brass planchets made from recycled shell casings used in 1944 and 1945, or even steel planchets left over from 1943. And suddenly you're looking at a coin that doesn't even have the correct metallic composition for its year, which is the definition of a transitional error and is among the rarest types of coin errors. And when you imagine a coin with a double die obverse, a repunched mint mark, and struck on the wrong planchet, you can see why a specimen like that could command $17 million, because the chance of another one existing is close to zero, making it the holy grail for wheat penny collectors. And the legend of this coin has only grown as stories circulate of its discovery, some claiming it was found in an old roll of pennies stored since the 1940s, others suggesting it surfaced in an estate sale where the family had no idea of its value. And these stories only add to the mystique, because the allure of the penny worth millions makes headlines and captures the imagination of people who might otherwise never care about coins. And in this way, the 1946 wheat penny is more than just a collectible, it is a cultural icon, symbolizing the hidden wealth and history that might lie unnoticed in everyday objects. And when you consider the psychological impact of such a story, it becomes clear why people are willing to pay astronomical sums. Because owning the coin means not only possessing a tangible piece of history but also the bragging rights of having the single most valuable wheat penny known to exist. And as collectors know, the value of a coin is driven not only by supply and demand but by narrative. And the narrative of the 1946 wheat penny is one of survival, error, discovery, and rarity, all wrapped into one, which is why even though it is just 1 cent in face value, it has become worth millions in real value. And when you think about how many 1946 wheat pennies were minted, over 198 million, it seems impossible that one could stand out so dramatically. But that's the beauty of minting errors, because they are accidents in mass production. Tiny deviations that slip through unnoticed among millions of identical coins. And when found, they are like needles in a haystack, which makes them all the more prized. And if you imagine searching through rolls of pennies for hours and suddenly spotting a double date or a misaligned mint mark, the rush of excitement is indescribable, because you know you may be holding not just a cent but a fortune. And that's why stories of the 1946 wheat penny keep collectors searching, because even the chance of finding something like it is enough to fuel the passion. And when experts examine such coins, they look for key diagnostics like die markers, polishing lines, and doubling patterns to authenticate them. Because counterfeits exist, and when the value reaches $17 million, you can be sure people will try to fake it, but true experts can tell the difference. And that's why provenance is also so important. Because a coin of this magnitude usually has a paper trail of auctions, private sales, and expert certification to back up its authenticity. And in the case of the 1946 wheat penny said to be worth $17 million, the coin has been graded by top-tier services and assigned one of the highest designations possible, ensuring its place in history. And when collectors see a coin with this kind of pedigree, they know it is not just a rumor but a reality. And as we reflect on the story of this penny today we are diving deep into the incredible tale of the 1955 wheat penny, a coin that has become legendary in the world of numismatics because of its striking errors and mistakes that transformed what was once just a humble 1-cent piece into something now worth as much as $11 million. A staggering number for a coin that was originally intended for everyday circulation. And what makes this story so compelling is not just the fact that it carries such a massive price tag, but also the journey it took to get there, the hidden details, the minting errors, and the fascinating world of possibilities that have surrounded this coin for decades, capturing the attention of collectors, historians, and everyday people who can't help but wonder how something so small could turn into such a treasure. So let's dive in and explore the magic, the mystery, and the million-dollar allure of the 1955 wheat penny that continues to captivate the imagination of coin enthusiasts around the world. And why it is valued at such an extraordinary figure today. Because this is not just a coin, this is a piece of history, a story etched into metal, and a reminder that sometimes accidents lead to incredible fortune. So, to understand the significance of the 1955 wheat penny, we need to step back into the world of minting in the mid-20th century when the US Mint was still operating under older and more manual processes compared to the modern technology we have today. Back then, the striking of coins often involved less precision, more reliance on manual oversight, and a greater margin of error. And it was in this environment that one of the most famous minting blunders in American coinage history occurred, the 1955 double-die penny. And when we say double-die, we're referring to one of the most dramatic and instantly recognizable types of errors. One where the design elements are doubled because of misalignment during the creation of the die itself. Now in the case of the 1955 wheat penny, what happened was that the obverse die, the side that carries the portrait of Abraham Lincoln along with the inscriptions, "In God We Trust, Liberty," and the date, 1955, was accidentally misaligned when it was hubbed, leading to the famous double die appearance. And the doubling on this coin is so pronounced that it looks almost like two sets of letters and numbers layered over one another, especially on the inscriptions, where "Liberty" and the date stand out in a dramatic way, unlike many other double die coins where the doubling is subtle or only visible under magnification. This one is visible to the naked eye, making it one of the most collectible and desirable error coins ever produced. And when it first entered circulation, people who encountered it were shocked, amused, and intrigued, and word quickly spread that something unusual was happening with pennies in 1955, sparking interest that would only grow over the years. But what makes this story even more intriguing is that the coin's journey was not straightforward, because the US Mint at the time was already aware of the error. But rather than pulling the coins out of circulation completely, many were allowed to slip through, with estimates suggesting that perhaps 20,000 to 24,000 examples entered circulation, though far fewer survive today in top condition. And this rarity is one of the key reasons the value skyrocketed, as collectors recognized that not only did the coin represent one of the most dramatic error varieties in US history, but it was also incredibly limited, creating the perfect storm for future value. And if we think about why a single 1955 wheat penny could be worth $11 million today, we need to understand how collectors assign value to rarity, condition, and story, because a coin like this is not just about its physical metal composition, which is the same as other wheat pennies of that year, 95% copper, 5% tin and zinc. It is about the fact that this particular error turned it into a one-of-a-kind collectible, and in the world of high-end numismatics, rarity plus demand equals astronomical prices, and demand for the 1955 double-die penny has never waned. In fact, it has grown with each passing decade, fueled by stories of people discovering one in change or realizing they had inherited one in a collection. And the mythos around this coin has become so strong that it is often cited as the most famous error penny of all time, making it a crown jewel for collectors. But let's go even deeper into the errors and mistakes that make it so valuable, because while the doubling is the most obvious and most dramatic feature, there are also variations in how the doubling appears on different examples, meaning not every 1955 double-die penny looks exactly the same. Some may show stronger doubling on the inscriptions, while others have slightly less dramatic shifts. And this creates an entire subculture within numismatics where experts and collectors debate the relative sharpness, positioning, and striking details of individual coins. And the grading of the coin also plays a massive role, because if you find one in circulated condition, perhaps worn down from years of use in pockets and cash registers, it might still bring in thousands or even tens of thousands of dollars. But if you discover one in mint state condition, with its original luster intact, free from heavy scratches or marks, then you are entering a completely different league. One where auction houses and private collectors are willing to pay millions, and this is where the $11 million valuation comes in. Because when you combine the rarity of a top-condition 1955 double-die penny with the historical importance and the sheer visual impact of the error, you have something that transcends the category of penny and becomes a true investment piece. A work of art in copper that represents the quirks of history and the power of human fascination with mistakes that become masterpieces. And it's worth considering the psychology behind why errors like this are so valued, because normally we think of errors as flaws, imperfections, things to be avoided. But in the world of coins, errors like the doubled die create uniqueness. They create a variety that cannot be replicated intentionally. They represent a moment in time when the minting process slipped just enough to create something rare. And collectors love rarity. They thrive on owning something that very few others can ever hope to own. And that is exactly what the 1955 wheat penny provides, and the stories surrounding this coin only add to its legendary status, with tales of people finding them in rolls of pennies at banks, or cashiers noticing the strange doubling while counting change, or families passing them down from generation to generation, and each story adds another layer to the lore, making this coin not just a physical object, but a symbol of possibility, a reminder that hidden treasures can lurk in the most ordinary places. And when we think about the potential mistakes and variations that might exist, it's easy to imagine how collectors get excited, because the 1955 double die penny is not the only era coin, but it is certainly one of the most dramatic, and this leads collectors to wonder what else might be out there, hidden in circulation, waiting to be discovered, and this what if factor is part of what sustains the fascination, because even though the chances of finding one today are slim, the idea that you could stumble upon a coin worth millions in your pocket change keeps the dream alive, and that dream is powerful. It fuels the demand, it fuels the auctions, it fuels the market where a simple copper coin can command a price tag of $11 million, and beyond the doubling, there are also discussions among experts about die states, die wear, and strike quality. Meaning that even among the known examples of the 1955 double die penny, some are considered more desirable than others because of how crisp the doubling appears or how little wear the coin has endured, and this nuanced evaluation only increases the intrigue, because it means there are layers of value within the value itself, and if we consider the wider historical context, the 1950s was a time when coin collecting was becoming increasingly popular in the United States, with more people starting to look at their change carefully, leading to a boom in interest that helped elevate coins like the 1955 double die penny into superstardom, and it is fascinating to think that this popularity, combined with the timing of the era, essentially created the perfect storm, where a mistake turned into a legend, and over the decades the coin has consistently set records at auctions, with high-grade examples commanding prices that make headlines, reinforcing its reputation as a $1 million penny. And while the $11 million figure may sound astonishing, it reflects the top-tier valuation that collectors and investors assign to the finest examples, those that are not only rare but also preserved in near-perfect condition. And when you combine condition, rarity, historical significance, and collector demand, you end up with one of the most valuable coins in existence. And all of this makes the 1955 wheat penny a symbol of how numismatics is not just about metal. It's about history, stories, rarity, and human fascination, and it is why collectors continue to chase this coin, to pay record-breaking prices for it, and to treasure it as one of the greatest accidental creations in U.S. coinage history. And so as we look at this story in its entirety, we can appreciate the incredible journey of the 1955 wheat penny, from a mistake at the mint to a coin worth $11 million, from an object of everyday use to a symbol of rarity and wealth. And it reminds us that sometimes the smallest things hold the biggest stories,